A pathetic clown, a scapegoat. Those are just some of the reactions from China's state-run media to the BC court decision to proceed with the extradition of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. She's been held in Canada, and to be clear, at her $10 million mansion, we should say, since December 2018. China has already retaliated, unlawfully arresting two Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, and they've been held in prison for over 500 days. But will there be more retaliation? As China has already warned, can Canada hit back? What about accepting Huawei as part of Canada's 5G net telecom network? To talk about that and the new news that President Donald Trump has just terminated the U.S. relationship with the WHO in the middle of the pandemic is the Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada, Francois-Philippe Champagne. Minister, always good to have you on the program, and I hope you and the family are well. China has warned that it will retaliate against Canada in the wake of the court decision on Meng Wanzhou. Are you expecting that?
Well, I would certainly urge restraint. I mean, one of the benefits of living in Canada is that you have an independent judiciary. That the decision in the Meng case is an independent decision by a judge in BC. And in this case, like in every case when a judge makes a decision in our country, you don't need to justify, you don't need to explain, you don't need to excuse yourself, because a decision of the court is a decision of the court, full stop. So we have been transparent from day one. We have said to the Chinese counterpart, this is a step in the judicial process which will be ongoing. And obviously, this is my words to my counterpart, which I've reached out, is to say, we should exercise restraint. This is not a time to escalate anything. This is a time, we have our differences, we know them. That's why I've called for having a smart and principled engagement with China. We will continue, obviously, to advocate for Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, because, you know, Evan, this has been my priority and the priority of this government since day one.
Sir, I appreciate that. It just hasn't worked. They're still lounging in prison. They don't have, they're languishing there. They don't, the lights are on 24 hours a day. They don't have reading glasses. They don't have access to legal support. Now there's real concern for their safety, that China will expedite the case against them. They have about a 99.9% conviction rate there. Are you concerned for their safety? Will this jeopardize their safety?
Well, we will take every measure that we can, Evan. You know, from day one, the last time I spoke to my counterpart in China, I asked that the two Michaels would have a virtual consular access, that we have virtual consular access so that we can talk to them under the Vienna Convention. We have rallied the international community behind their case. We have said that arbitrary detention should not and is not a tool of diplomacy, and we will continue. There's quite a difference between the Meng case of someone who is arrested under an international treaty of extradition, which is afforded due process in a country which believes in the rule of law, compared to two Canadians who have been arbitrarily detained. You said it, for more than 500 days. That's 500 days too much. So we will continue to advocate, to put the pressure where it needs to be, because that's the way that you're going to get them released.
Well, but it's not working. I guess what you could do, will you warn other Canadians traveling there? If China is prepared, and they're admitting it, to arbitrarily detain or imprison Canadians, pluck them off the street and essentially kidnap them, are you going to warn other Canadians now that there's a risk of escalation? Be careful in China, you could be imprisoned?
Well, certainly, I think people take notice of what's going on. People have seen that. They have seen what's going on now, and we will certainly advise Canadians as we should. But what I'm saying in this case now, we will continue to advocate for them. And I would say, you know, having a responsible and principled engagement with China is not weak. That's the smart way to get them out. We've seen that movie before. And therefore, we are making sure that we do everything that we can. We explore all solutions.
Okay, but let me just ask you, sir, to be fair, you could take Magnitsky sanctions against Chinese leadership. Are you considering that?
Well, I'd say we need to be smart in what we're doing when it comes to that, Evan. We need to take measures that will lead to their release. That's exactly what we're doing. We're exploring. We have a strategy. We've been following it. We'll continue to speak up, to stand up for them. We've rallied the international community behind that. People understand today, and I think it's damaging to China. I've said it to my Chinese counterpart. I've talked to him probably more than any foreign minister in 4 months. I talk to him every other month. We've been engaging with each other. They know where we stand. We know what's their concern. They know what's our concern. But one thing is clear is that you cannot compare someone who's been arrested in Canada, a country which believes in the rule of law, and the separation of
But
power.
I understand that.
The people who are arbitrarily detained in China.
I appreciate that, sir. But if it was working, I would say great. But it isn't the definition of insanity to do the same thing over and over again.
Well,
and look what China seems emboldened. Look what they're doing in Hong Kong. I know Canada's issued a statement, but those are words, and clearly China doesn't respond to words. Look what's happening to the reports about the re-education camps, quote unquote. There have been options. Canada could abandon the Asia Infrastructure Bank. You could recognize Taiwan as a country, given what's happened in Hong Kong. Are any of those on the table, sir?
Well, I would say if you want to speak about Hong Kong, I mean, we were at the center. That's the second declaration, but we did that with allies. The latest where we said that we are very concerned, because if you step back, we know that it's the one country to system that has made Hong Kong what it is today, which is a trading hub and a financial hub in Asia. And we've said very clearly that we're concerned that the imposition by Beijing of a national security law will erode that foundation. And we will be looking at the implication and the ramification that this may have on the special arrangements we have with Canada and Hong Kong.
But outside of words, what can you do? I'm just like, on Friday, the U.S. president, and I'm not suggesting he's the benchmark of foreign policy, but look, he decided to end their special trading status to punish China for what he believes is a deep curtailment of the freedom. And then he also, and I'd love your comment on this, terminated the U.S. relationship with the WHO. They provided over $400 million there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, to the first part, I would say the last statement that was issued was between the United States, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom, and Canada was front and center when it came to framing, obviously, our response. When you're looking at the World Health Organization, we said from the get-go, I spoke to my Australian counterpart at the time and said, certainly Canada wants an independent investigation. We want to ask tough questions, but as the Prime Minister said, you need to do that at the right time. That's the smart thing to do. You don't want to undermine, at this point of time, the institution, the World Health Organization, which is providing advice and data to countries like in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, in Africa. We need them now. So what we said, let's ask the tough questions about the leadership, the alert system, the financing. But let's do that, at the appropriate time after the process.
But the truth is, what about action? I mean, again, like, have you coordinated with the U.S. to, for example, end special treatment of Hong Kong? They're doing it. Could you cut finances to the Asian Infrastructure Bank and fund it through the World Bank? I mean, when can Canada say to China, we're going to take concrete actions? Otherwise, their words in China is kidnapping Canadians, as it were, and look what they're doing in Hong Kong. You just wonder what is keeping China in check.
Well, I think what we're doing is not weak. It's pretty smart. Because you want to be with the international community when it comes to the response. What I said to you is that we were at the forefront when we did the two statements. What I'm saying to you is that with the international partners, and we're going to have a call among a number of international partners on Monday, which is scheduled, the United States, the UK. We're going to be talking, like I said, about the ramification and the implications of the decision by Beijing on the special arrangements that Canada has with Hong Kong. But you know what? Foreign policy in Canada is decided by Canadian for Canadian. So this is going to be us looking at what makes sense from a Canadian perspective. We stood up. We have spoken in respect of the freedom and the liberty of the people of Hong Kong. We have done that for the Michaels and Mr. Schellenberg and all the other Canadians which are facing death penalty in China. And we will continue to do that.
All right, I got to lead it there. A very fluid situation. Mr. Champagne, always good to have you on the program, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.